All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the latest edition of our See Tomorrow series from the eTourism Summit. It's been a really extraordinary group of conversations, and it's made so by amazing partners and some extraordinary destination marketing minds that have been long been big fans and a big part of the eTourism Summit community. So we're thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you so much. We look forward to joining you in September for the eTourism Summit live and in person in Las Vegas with IPW. I think we pushed out a story yesterday, but we're up to like 3 research programs, 2 award programs, 4 bright and shiny new objects, 8 panel conversations, and 20 case studies. And one of those case studies is actually with Aaron and Monty with Simple View and Visit Irving. So listen, I want to really reach out and say that eTourism Summit has been what it is, and this audience is what it is because of amazing community and amazing partners. And Simple View has been there since the very, very beginning. So I want to thank all of you guys at Simple View and your entire team. Pretty hard to not have the kind of insights and knowledge when you're working with over 900 different DMOs around the world. So again, we're in for a real treat with you, David and Jason. Thank you guys so much for being here and being part of this. And I will turn it over to you for a fantastic conversation with a couple of amazing, innovative DMO partners.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm assuming you can all hear me. I don't actually have any feedback on that. So here it is, the clock is running. More than a year ago, a good friend of mine, Dan Hollowak, CEO of CrowdRiff, put it so eloquently. He said, you know, in a world where almost every interaction we have now under the auspices of COVID starts and ends with a digital component, whether we're getting up and ordering our morning coffee from Starbucks, whether we're trying to connect with our mom on Zoom and say hello and check in, whether we're ordering our groceries, checking our COVID test, looking for flight regulations. He put it that the innovation of the next 5 years would probably be jammed into the 18 months that followed. We're there, we're 18 months in, and those innovations certainly have been coming fast and furious. We've learned to implement better. We've also learned to begin to test the edge and the envelope of what we do with our e-capabilities. I'm David Peacock. I'm the Senior Advisor to the Future Tourism Group at Simple View. And with me today, I have Aaron Nissen, the Director of Digital Marketing Strategy at Simple View. I have Monty White, the Director of Marketing at the Irving Convention and Visitors Bureau. I've got Leroy Bridges, VP of Digital Communications at Visit St. Pete's Clearwater Area CVB. And I've got Jason Swick, VP Strategy of Insights at Simple View. So whether it's harnessing UGC or whether it's getting more out of the e-data and e-intelligence that we have, it still requires a human component. And today we want to go behind the scenes. We want to look at some of the thinking that goes into creating new frontiers in our e-capabilities. So first up, I want to talk to Jason. And by the way, welcome to See Tomorrow series from the eTourism Summit. I think it's a great series. I've been a rapt fan, and I thank you all for joining today. First up, Jason, we talked a month ago about identifying best practices where in the eTourism world, people were pushing the boundaries, and immediately you jumped to something called Life's Rewards from St. Pete's Clearwater, and you asked to add that to the agenda. Aaron, your situation was a little different. You worked directly with Monty and Irving on a significant shift to a data-driven leisure marketing project. And if I had to give it a working title, I'd use the words that Monty used when he described it to me, and it was leisure is crushing it. So today we're going to talk about Life's Rewards in St. Pete's, and we're going to talk about leisure is crushing it in Irving. So first off, Jason, can you give us a top line of what it is? What is Life's Rewards and why you thought it was so important? Share that with us, please.
Yeah, for sure. First off, thank you for having me here. I'm super excited to be here. Nice to be on the other side of the camera. Usually I'm like you, David, right? Doing the interviews and talking with folks on the layover. And so I'm really happy now to be able to share this because, first and foremost, I've been a fan of Leroy's for a long time. And I want to be clear also too, that Leroy doesn't do any digital marketing with me and the team here at Simpleview, but I do like what he's doing, and I've liked what he's done for a long time. Before the show, we were kind of joking a little bit about him and kind of the group of guys and girls that I refer to as the Destination Marketing Mafia, right? Gaitha and him and several others, because I just love what they do, and I keep a close eye on them, more so now even with the pandemic. But one thing I think that stood out for me is, in my role and in Aaron's role, we are really rarely asked to keep an eye on what's happening with trends and direction that we see the industry moving in. And for destination marketers, this past year goes without saying it's been unbelievably challenging. But I think it's safe to say that COVID has certainly, sped up the speed, really the digital transformation. And even I would say even rewarded those like Leroy for embracing it. And so platforms like we're on today, like Zoom, YouTube, which we're regularly on with our show, Amazon, which we'll get into with Life Rewards, kind of moved from conveniences in our life to really outright dependencies just so we can make it through our day. And so I think, as any destination marketer out there, as we're looking towards these trends, I think that we would want to be making decisions as we're moving forward with our budgets to take these increased reliances on technology and really try to use them to our advantage. And I think Leroy is one of those guys out there who's done a really, really good job of doing that. Now, in regards to the show, I think it's fantastic. I'm going to let him get into more of the particulars about it, but I think it's a great use of trying something different during a hard time to try to reach your audience where they are. So yeah, I mean, I'm just a big
give
fan.
us the look and feel though, because
the show is a series that came out in May that really, and first off, it's bite size as well. It's not long form content. It's pretty short, so it's very consumable. It's about a gentleman who comes into a destination who has recently been let go from his job. Is some scandalous things are happening, and he ends up staying at this hotel, which then slowly becomes this tour around St. Pete's. Which is again a great way to be able to market it. And again, Leroy's probably best to explain it, but I think it's a great use of getting your content and your destination in front of folks of where they're at.
Fantastic, thanks for that.
Yeah,
Aaron, in the leisure is crushing it project. Immediately, the same question to you: what's out there? What's really, I didn't use crushing it. I wish I had. What's really crushing it? I'm going to say that from now on. And you immediately jumped to the project with Irving and Monty. Tell me a bit about how that came about. And then Monty, I'm going to throw to you and ask to actually describe what it looked like. So give us a little bit of the mechanics of how the two of you started working together on this and where it led you.
Absolutely. It's actually a long story. I'll try and summarize relatively quickly. But this started way about 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago when Monty and his team were looking at getting a T-bid. And so as part of that, we were developing some strategies and campaigns to, help with the T-bid funding and put those dollars to use and to work for the city and the hotels. And through that process, we also happen to do, sorry, I'm in a cabin. I've got flies buzzing around. If you see me waving my hands, I'm on holidays this week. So hence the lovely bear. So as we were going through the T-bid planning process, the pandemic hit. And so with meetings and the whole meeting sector really, closed down, Irving needed to look for alternate ways to generate revenue for their hoteliers. And so they were able to secure some small seed funding for campaigns, and we split it between a meetings campaign and a leisure campaign. And that first campaign was 130 split relatively evenly. And the results for the leisure campaign started to just take off. And that was really significant because I know the Irving team was a little bit nervous, and Monty will talk about, they weren't really a leisure destination. They didn't have a brand, a lot of visual assets already. So it was kind of a bit of a risk for the organization to pivot to leisure, but we were able to drive results right from the get-go. And some of the real impetus of the campaign creation was we did some sentiment research. which identified that there was a small niche market in kind of North Texas for leisure holiday, and particularly with some of the hotels with larger amenities and nice pools. There's a huge market for that for Irving. And so we were able to kind of pinpoint that precise market. And as the campaign went on, it continued to grow in results. And it then yielded a second round of funding, which is around just over 400,000. And now we're into the third potential round of funding through the ARPA fund. So it was really kind of a long journey to get there. But I think the core of how it started was we realized there was a small niche for leisure travel in Irving. And, Monty and the team, allowed us to, give us the trust to go with that. And that was really kind of the catalyst for, I think, some change that we'll talk a little bit about with Monty and his team, because like I said, leisure was not a market for them in the past.
Thanks for that. What I am hearing in there that I think is worth underlining is the project as it started was a project of investigation that led to its own outcome. You had a bunch of hypotheses, you tested them, but you really did adjust the program, and the data drove what you did next, which is that move into leisure, which was unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lot of data, starting with the sentiment research, what consumers were saying. And that's how we found Irving was a 1 to 2 day destination for leisure travel, weekend getaways, etc. And so that was a starting point. But then as we started to run our creative and our ads, we continued to optimize and changed every element of the campaign to refine our targeting strategies and our messaging strategies, just to hone in on that low-hanging fruit that we could get to Irving hotels. And so it was really a data-driven campaign, because we didn't have any creative really when we started it. So we had to kind of improvise as we went, a lot of trial and error, testing, but that mindset actually yielded much better results. We were getting conversion rates of 50-some% towards the end of the campaign.
So, Monty, that's a shift. Irving is a great meetings destination. Really well managed, great work coming out of there consistently. Homage to Maura Gost, of course, whenever you talk about Irving. Merci beaucoup. When you saw the results and you saw the shift to the potential of capturing leisure, which you've done successfully now for quite a few weeks, can you tell me from the consumer's perspective, just sort of the same thing Jason did, what did it actually look like when it arrived in the consumer's mindset or in their awareness in their buyer decision process?
Right. Sure. So we actually used a lot of very vibrant, splashy images in our ads. And those were combined, of course, with a really slick website that they had executed for us. And Aaron recently described it, and I thought this was so clever, as couples, drinks, and pools. And that's a really good way to put it. And there was certainly a whole lot of that because we knew that those attention-grabbing kind of imagery would be key for the success of this whole campaign. Naturally, as that year progressed, as we go into winter and so forth, it goes from being couples and drinks and pools to more couples and drinks and fire pits. So as the seasons evolved, so did our whole look and the consumer experience. Interestingly, we started out with a mix of stock images and images that we already had in our library. And as Aaron touched on, we ran through that really, really quickly. We just didn't have a lot to use. And we were having weekly calls, and I knew on every weekly call, Aaron was going to say, Monty, we need more images. And I would think, oh no, today is the call day. We don't have any images. I don't know where he thinks I want to get this from. So it was getting a little bit frustrating. And we turned to UGC. And that we relied heavily on that for the remainder of the year and throughout this year. And that turned out to be a real lifesaver. So I would say, amazing images, splashy website, fact that we're pushing deals. It was all these elements that made for a really, really good, really nice consumer experience.
Thanks for that, man. We'll get into some of the metrics of this one, but I do want to jump over to Leroy. Life's Reward. It's a real Life's Rewards, as you coach me, 2 S's. It's a really progressive and engaging content play. And you talked to me a while ago and you said, people have done it before, but you've done it really well. You did it incredibly quickly in terms of the pivot, Leroy. How long was it in the works, and were you even considering it pre-COVID?
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me. I think Jason brought up an interesting point. Candidly, this isn't a project we worked on with Simple View. So kudos to you all. Thank you for the invite to be able to tell the story of life's rewards and being able to share best practices within the DMO world. It's a special thing with the industry. Yeah, you're right. Life's rewards came to life during the pandemic, but the idea was something that came from 4+ years ago. And I'll give a shout out to our film commissioner, Tony Armour. We are a DMO that has a film commission within our organization. And several years ago, the likes of Marriott and other large brands have created these content studios. And we saw that. And Marriott, I think it was like Two Bellmen or something like that. It was one of their TV shows that they launched. And we said, why can't we do this in our own destination? The Film Commission uses a lot of incentive dollars to attract productions here, creating content that, some people would never know is in our backyard. Obviously, they're driving local jobs and local spend, but how can we get, going on the marketing side? To our detriment, we never got it off the ground. Insert Visit Florida and Miles partnership in the middle of the pandemic last year. And they came to us with the possibility of doing this, and we were in from the word go. It was an opportunity to create something that we had thought about, but also something entirely new. DMOs don't launch TV shows every day, and the ability to bring the destination to life in a new way. We know that branded content like this is 6x at least more valuable than a traditional piece of content. And so let's build this. Let's get it out there. Happy to share some results as we talk through this later too.
You did put it together though in the space of less than 6 months, from concept to starting to shoot.
Yeah. So script writing. Yeah, script writing happened late last summer, early fall. Shooting happened late January, February. Some people may think the pandemic was maybe more of a challenge. As we're looking at season 2, we're finding out there were actually quite a few cost efficiencies because of the pandemic. They're just, studios and talent wasn't in as much of a demand. Locations were actually easier to use because of our traffic, our visitation traffic hadn't quite picked up to where it is now. So yeah, we were able to turn it around pretty quickly. And as of right now, yeah, more than 2.5 million views by more than 250,000 people of this 8-episode, 12 to 16 minute per episode TV show that is on Amazon Prime, and we're marketing heavily through that Amazon platform.
So hang on, you're down now, waiting for the next bunch to go in the camp, but you have to negotiate rates with your actors. How's that?
Yeah, so I may be calling on you guys. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what those rates turn out to be, but definitely some work on season 2 underway. So let me know what your guys' availability might look like.
Very cool. I do want to remind the audience that's out there, this is a discussion. I'm sorry we can't talk interactively, but throw your questions up. I mean, these guys are great. I've got good questions for them. I bet you got better questions for them. So please do use the interactive chat function and post your questions, or you can stick it up in the Q&A. Even, I think I can see that one. In the chat would be best. Thanks. Oh no, in the Q&A would be best, apparently. There it is. All right. So I want to go back over to you, Jason. Let's talk a little bit more about life's rewards and what you see coming out of programs like that. We're going to talk in a minute about the functional changes we had to make in the KPIs, but just from a 40,000 foot view, what are you seeing?
Yeah, listen, I haven't done one of these, so I can't talk about particulars, but I can talk about some things that I do like, or some opportunities that I see, and maybe even Leroy can validate some of these. Or not. But first and foremost, I think it's a great way to, again, really expand your reach and really meet your audience where they're at with really content that's engaging and meaningful and helps influence travel. During the pandemic, we talked a lot about 3 types of content. It's usually informational or of utility or of entertainment. I think entertainment, like they've done here, is one of the harder pieces of content to make, and they've done a good job of doing that. But more importantly, you're reaching people where they're at on their phones, across their smart TVs now, even gaming consoles. My son watches shows now on his gaming console, Fire TV, the web. It's got a lot of opportunity to be able to cast a net wide for a destination like St. Pete. So that's something that sticks out to me as a benefit. Oftentimes when we're consulting and working with clients, David, we really preach like this kind of, as we're talking about budgets and whatnot, we really kind of preach the 70, 20-10 rule, which is really, 70% of your budget spent on things that are going to work all the time, right? Those are kind of our core marketing things that we always do. Things like SEO, things like paid search. Those are some of the things that we know are going to work. 20% of the budget then should be spent on things that complement that. So, right, if you're doing a lot of paid search or core stuff, things like YouTube video and stuff like that is complementary. But then spending 10% of your budget on things like moonshot ideas or other ideas that are kind of outside of the box. And I hate using that, but it's the truth. It's a big chance. I think during the pandemic, I think you can't argue that Leroy and the team there, it's a bit of a risk, right, to have to go and fund dollars into something. But again, if you already developed a system like the 70-20-10 rule, where you're already planning on carving out budget for 10% of these moonshot ideas, then you might every now and then hit a home run like these guys did. And I know when Leroy gets into these numbers, you'll see that it ended up being really, really, really well. But I think looking forward, I can only imagine that incrementally this helps expose St. Pete's to people who may not know that they exist. I think that's something we're always looking for is, incrementality. How can I really move the numbers and try to influence more travel to my destination? I think it provides a lot of opportunity for evergreen content and to remarket the destination in many, many different ways. Often when we're doing ads, we don't have that luxury because the ads typically serve on one type of channel with one purpose. I think this provides other opportunities. I'm thinking of things even like watch parties, right? And Leroy, I don't know if we really got into that, but even, the opportunity to be able to now engage with your audience and set up these new things like watch parties. We've seen it on platforms like Netflix. Amazon has these options now to be able to have these type of watch parties where everybody can get together, big audiences of people, and really engage socially while they're watching something. I think that provides some additional opportunity, I think, for DMOs to be able to connect with their audience, whether that's through Amazon or through apps like Scener or other apps that offer this type of marketing. So again, I'm just thrilled to see, a new avenue that these guys are going down. And I think there's lots more runway there.
Well, thanks. And I think you touched on stakeholder engagement, which,
Yeah.
Leroy, we'll come back to it. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to layer on a couple of quick thoughts. So I love this 70-20-10, and to speak to maybe kind of being creative budget wise, I'll be honest, the cost to produce this show, we used our film incentive. So looking for those creative ways to actually fund it. These are our dollars as an organization, as a film commission, an incentive going to create a show on our behalf, a really creative way to do it. And to piggyback off the watch parties, we actually did contract with a number of influencers who helped give us extension of this program, and they organized watch parties on Instagram with their own networks of people, right? There's nothing better than having an influencer who's well connected, telling their people, hey, go watch the show, this sounds awesome, and then tied in a sweepstakes that we can dive a little bit more into the watch party and going after that first party data acquisition, which is key.
Let's talk a little bit more in a minute about the engagement piece too, because you really did put your tendrils out into the community and it was recognized and acknowledged. But I want to come back to the 70-20-10, and I want to talk to Monty on Leisure is Crushing It. It was highly adaptive and reactive. Did you intend it to be that way? I mean, you've said it really clear. You're a very solid, meetings destination. This is a change. Did you go into it knowing that you were going to shift based on what it told you, or is that an aha moment in and of itself?
No, actually, it was an absolute pivot for us. And Irving is first and foremost a business and meetings destination, always has been. It's what we do. People don't typically come here for vacations. That's an okay thing. It's just not who we are. We do what we do really well. So when we made this pivot, naturally, I was very nervous about doing that. And when I say nervous, I mean, I was scared. Like, I was terrified. I thought, oh boy, this probably not a good idea. But business travel and meetings just weren't happening. And so we had to do something, and we just jumped all in on this. And that aha moment, I would say, would be discovering that we had this much bigger leisure market than we realized. Obviously, Aaron had done his due diligence. He had all that data, that research, the sentiment analysis that he did. So he had an inkling, an idea that there was something there, something that there could be tapped into. We had just never pursued it aggressively like we did with this campaign. And when it took off, everybody took notice. You know, it was like flipping a switch. We very suddenly had higher weekend occupancy than we had weekday occupancy. And in a town like ours, that's unusual. We typically have very full hotels during the weekday, and then it's just an absolute ghost town on the weekends. And that is no longer the case, and that's still no longer the case. So I've got to say that was probably the biggest learning experience and the biggest aha moment.
Let me ask you about that, because this is really interesting, and I'm hearing a lot of this around the country now. Most meetings destinations want to get back into business, obviously, but we can actually do relatively, telling projections, if not accurate, that's going to have a runway that's quite long, maybe up to 36 months, but hopefully a little shorter. And all of those meetings destinations are now looking at what they do in the interim. They can't all be considering leisure. They're not all well situated. You do have DNA that makes you a good leisure destination. You can't have, pools and drinks and people if you don't have pools and drinks, so to speak. But do you think there's a lesson in there for the meetings industry across the board? And I guess sort of the way to couch is to say, you're not going to dump your leisure work anymore. It's going to be part of the Irving mix from here on in. Is there a lesson there for us nationally?
I really do think so. This was a lesson in leveraging your assets. And here in Irving, we've got a couple of assets that work for us really well. From a meetings perspective, it's our location in the country, of course, and being in a major metro. But as a city itself, we have a really good supply of property that has resort style amenities. And so that was the key thing that we were able to leverage for this campaign that had to do, mostly with staycations. Come to this property. It's a very safe thing to do. You can enjoy all these amenities. You can be out of your house. Not every town is going to have that asset, but some places they may have hiking trails nearby that they could leverage. It could run the gamut. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely a lesson there to just kind of really reassess what it is that you have. And so if you're hurting because your meetings aren't coming through at the moment, there are other rocks that you can kick over. And we learned that in a very big way with this.
Well, fantastic. And
Just to chime in,
let me just, I was coming right to you, Aaron. 8 years ago, leveraging those kind of learnings quickly would almost have been impossible, Monty. It's the nature of our ability to communicate and also understand data, which is where I was coming to you, Aaron. What other, data-driven insights do you want to talk about, specifically in the leisure is crushing it case?
Well, I think that's going to be unique to every destination, but with Irving specifically, kind of what Monty was saying, we did some of the early sentiment research. I had a kind of an awkward presentation to Monty and his team saying, hey guys, you're a meetings destination. Like, it was a big aha. And they were like, yeah, we know that. So then we honed in on that small leisure market. And I think, there is, being up in northern Texas there, there's a lot of smaller town communities out there where people come in for the city. And so we really looked at those behaviors of why people come to the city. And so that's where we kind of crafted this around specifically couples getaways. And with the pandemic, the timing was perfect. We saw the trends on Google. Everybody was looking at last minute accommodation deals, getting out of town, kind of, those quick getaways. And so it all just kind of came together at the right time for, Irving. And so the amount of data we looked at is, from ad targeting and demographic and geographic locations. as well as we also use geolocation data to measure the arrivals and track, how people came to the destination, where they came from, etc. So, and I think that was maybe a bit of a pivot now. And before, meetings was easier to conduct and sell, because then you can see room blocks and you can see ROI. Well, I think what we're seeing now is there's enough data out there from providers that now you can start to really see the ROI of leisure marketing. And so I think that's where we were able to build that trust with Monty and his team by showing the data and the throughputs of how successful this has been. And that's, incrementally allowed them to get successive funding from, CARES and then ARPA, et cetera. So, I think leisure marketing has come so far. There's just so much data available that it's easier to justify and measure the return on investments there. Sorry, I got a background there.
You're good. Thanks for that. We're going to come back to role and function, because Monty and Aaron, you've both been talking about the how you roll this program out. It's a very different program. It's a very hands on the stick kind of program. I want to stick a pin in it though. And before we talk about the role and function of executing, I want to talk about KPIs. So I'm going to go back to Leroy. Neither of these programs is standard operating procedure. They needed to be developed as concepts, which means they also need to develop their own objectives and KPIs. Let's talk about that. Leroy, what KPIs did you set out in planning, and which ones revealed themselves to you along the way?
Yeah, so I'll give another shout out to our president and CEO, Steve Hayes, who embraced this project from the beginning as well, and allowed us to kind of embark down this path in investing in a project that, again, had never been done. I mean, when you're creating regular content for your website or a paid search campaign, KPIs are pretty straightforward. They're out there. We're familiar with it. When you're launching a TV show, people are like, oh, that's a great idea, but how do you know it's going to work? And that's a common refrain. Obviously, when you're doing something new, you can't let that, hold you back too much. But we really looked at how do we measure a lot of our other video content, and then taking a deep dive into what is that multiplier, what is that X factor for branded content. The reality is these are 8-minute long episodes, 12 to 16-minute long episodes, eight episodes in total. If somebody sits down and watches that whole season, more valuable than somebody watching an entire YouTube video, because the whole experience is much more engaging, right? It's not commercialized. We're able to put all of our communities into that. So community buy-in, being able to showcase multiple attractions, and so again, views, engagement with that video. So Amazon, believe it or not, probably not hard to believe, all kinds of digital tracking on these episodes. And then the ability, because it's living within Amazon, to retarget or message those who have watched it or haven't consumed it yet. So we can, we've got buy running through Amazon on the Fire Stick, on the homepage. We know they haven't consumed the show. They're a viewer in our key demographic, geographic area. Let's make sure that they message them. And then on top of that, trying to engage those who have consumed the show or not with the sweepstakes. Stay in the suite that we filmed in, generate that first party data by getting submissions to enter to win. More than 500,000 submissions on a sweepstakes and a considerable opt-in rate for those. So those were, some of the metrics, some old school, but also really trying to make sure that we're leveraging the platform that it's on and retargeting from a marketing perspective.
So most of the second half of that series of KPIs, the things like leveraging a sweepstakes, retargeting, you don't necessarily sit down and have that in your initial plan. Your initial plan is, we're going to do this show, we're going to look for eyeballs versus cost expenditure, but we're also going to plumb out some of these other metrics. So on the sweepstakes, it would be what was the uptake and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I think we all know by now, it's not a if you build it, they will come marketing world. I mean, the reality is organic is dead. And just because you spent, we spent $275,000, that was our commitment to produce the show, a film incentive. Just because you spent that doesn't mean people are going to consume it. So you've got to find ways.
You typified that as organic is dead, meaning that you must amplify.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, great. We produce a show when we put it on Amazon.
I love the way you said that. Let me juxtapose our two different very different generation said. I attribute that to Theodore Levitt, and he said, if you build a better mousetrap, the world will still not beat a path to your door.
Exactly.
Organic is dead. Very good.
Yep.
Thanks, really.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Jason. What do you see in terms of the evolution of KPIs? Leroy's pointed out that almost half of the KPIs they come up with happen in situ during the project because they notice those opportunities. Aaron and Monty have talked about the same thing. In the age of data-driven decision making, what do you see about the shift to KPIs?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think regardless, I think what truly matters is metrics are tied back to whatever your business goals are. I think that's should go without saying, but it's something I think we struggle with, right, at times. Due to I think budgets being challenged or decreased. This is going to be we're going to have to be much more efficient with our marketing funds, and so we're going to have to find better ways to measure. I think the challenge, though, for a lot of DMOs is going to be embracing some of these new consumer behaviors or choosing to hit older KPIs, which may or may not resonate rather with your stakeholders as they are becoming much more savvy. And the pandemic has really forced many of us to start to show more real value. I think, Leroy seems like a team that in his group are embracing some of those things and finding ways to tie that back into influence again, travel to destination. Now, the good news, I think, though, is that, the democratization of data and having access to data is helping DMOs be able to tell these stories much more efficiently than maybe in the past. And I think with data privacy, easy access to all this data and emerging technology, DMOs are going to have to evolve to meet the needs of these stakeholders and really help tell their story. So, I think historically, it's moving away from measuring to just top of funnel metrics and starting to reconsider metrics that really go beyond the click. As Leroy alluded to, all web visitors are not created equal. We noticed that on websites, and as we're starting to see platforms like Google Analytics 4 start to evolve and move away from traditional things that maybe we looked at, like things like bounce rates and things like that, we're going to have to start looking at more blended metrics and more composite metrics that are much more meaningful to be able to tell our story. And things like engaged visitors, or things like highly engaged visitors, where you're measuring time on site with some desired action on the website, or things like cost per referral or cost per view in Leroy's case. This is going to lead to propping up, I think, areas on a DMO's site that are showing the best results, and then finding gaps and constructing models to help fill some of those voids. So I think just the current top of funnel metrics that unfortunately many of us still measure to. Are
you working on those gaps now and working on some?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And Aaron will get into this, I think, with some of the stuff they used on the measurement side with Monty. But I think tying in a lot of marketing activity is that turning into visitation? And when it does, what does that economic impact to my particular destination? We are evolving more and more to being able to tell that story for DMOs.
Okay, well then let's do that. Let's go over to Aaron and Monty really quickly and talk about anything you want to add to the KPI discussion, specifically in the context of the leisure is crushing it.
Yeah, I'll maybe start, and Monty, feel free to jump in. But I think we're, as I alluded to earlier with leisure marketing, it's been very fluffy metrics, impressions and clicks and reach and things like that. And I think as the pandemic hit, everybody needs to be more accountable with their dollars spent. So I think that's where we started looking at metrics further down the funnel: referrals, cost per referral, arrivals, where did they stay? Did they stay at desired properties, et cetera? And I think that's where, this massive shift in data over the last few years, especially in the tourism industry, has allowed us to measure the customer journey through the funnel from awareness through to arrival. And then that gives us all sorts of downstream insights as to, who we targeted, but who actually arrived and at what rate. And therefore we can adapt our targeting strategies. And so when you actually build out a full customer campaign measurement model, you can incrementally measure every step of the way. And then it's just a matter of levers to push and pull, a little more of this, a little less of that. And then you can focus on efficiencies with each dollar spent. And so I think that's where, the growth of data the last few years has really enabled leisure marketing to be more data driven and less about creative and that tagline or, some of those things As Monty alluded to, it's not something we want to brag about, but we did start off with some stock imagery. We had to very selectively choose, drinks by the pool that you couldn't, determine where it was from. But then we quickly pivoted and found the proper UGC content. And so for us, it was kind of, a real eye opener that there's so much data now. And if you actually watch the data, you can improve the performance. We went from.
So let's talk about that though, because you are in the some sense, when we talk in a meetings destination, we're often analyzing, pre-sale data and post-sale data. This is different. You're talking about being in the marketing program and measuring the data and shifting as you go. This is real-time adjustment, Monty, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. They are continually optimizing, and they're giving us some really useful metrics that we can bring back to our stakeholders. Aaron has come up with an economic value formula, and we know specifically how many referrals we're sending to our properties, and we've got this number that we can give, and it's reasonably accurate, an estimation of the economic value that generates. And in addition to that, he's able to provide us reports with exactly who is getting these referrals, and so we're able to go to our stakeholders and say, hey, A, B, C, D, like this is the value that we are giving you. And that is hugely impactful to be able to bring that to the table and say, this is why you need us.
So there's a real immediacy there. And I know that you've had to make observations and adjustments internally and in terms of role and function. And Leroy, you as well. I want to ask you both this. In a world where we're using data-driven decision-making, in a world where we are more agile, as our friend Dan Holowak pointed out at the beginning, every interaction starts and ends digitally, and because of it, we're incredibly more agile. What shifts do we need to make at the DMO level to make sure that we are able to capitalize on that agility? What role and function changes do you see in St. Pete's and Irving, to both of you specifically, to facilitate this going forward? What's the difference now from a role and function perspective?
I'll go ahead. Of course, what we've seen in the last, and we know that disruption forces change, and we've certainly seen that within our organization, and most definitely here within our marketing team. And this Leroy actually tipped this up really well because he was talking about organic is dead. One of the shifts that we saw in particular, we have a really talented marketing manager, and she has been trying to get this content marketing program up off the ground for a number of years, and it's been very, very slowly doing that. And over this past year, we found ourselves in a situation where really content marketing was all we could afford to do for a while. And so that disruption, that shift really accelerated that change. And so we were in a situation where we had to build out that program. And then Aaron and Simple View, they stepped in a few months later with these campaigns, and it was like adding jet fuel to the mix. And so now we had a platform where it wasn't just organic, but we were actually pushing that message out, and it was working amazingly. But yeah, that is definitely a big change that we have seen just recently in our approach and in how our team and what our roles are. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of change.
And over to you, Aaron, because I know internally at Simple View, you've shifted roles and functions specifically to be able to work with the Monties of the world and to be agile and to do these things. I call them hand on the stick things, as if you were flying the airplane. You one hand on the throttle, one hand on the stick, and 2 feet on the pedals at all times. What kind of changes have you had to make?
Yeah, well, I think what I kind of realized was that there's so many different channels, and you got your social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and then you've got your blogs and your website content, and so content is really distributed amongst roles and organizations who work with that. And so as we're working with Monty's team there, and we realized their need for content to really take what they're doing and really amplify it out. and then all the work we're doing across email, SEO, et cetera. So we actually created an internal process working with Monty's team to really tighten up our content approach with their team. And this actually allowed us to really just be transparent with each other and work as a team truly across organizations. We had not really difficult conversations, but we basically just, said, hey, what do you guys have capacity to do? What do you need us to do? How can we fill in the gaps? But we did it all under the guise of a framework that aligned all the efforts. And so now we could start to assign roles and tasks to people so that they see how their outputs can be distributed in other ways, as opposed to just doing content on the blog and not really thinking about content distribution. So it really, I think, took what, the solid foundation that Monty and his team had and just made it a little more well-oiled with, how all the resources that we bring to bear, but we could better support his team in the ways that they need and not just do, the same type of work. And so it allowed us just to pivot our role to better support. And I think that's brought a lot of efficiencies with their content program.
So if I could sum it up from both of you, then functional changes are required. They're necessary, but we don't need to be scared of them. You've executed them. They're working. We always worry, when we start to do things differently, especially in marketing, what will the functional change be? But you're saying we can handle it. Just be prepared to shift and be flexible. All right, super. Back over to you, Leroy. I want to ask the same question. You start doing life's rewards. You're driving a Cadillac now, and you have a driver, and you take lunch appointments, but you only eat salads. So, Mr. Producer, what functional changes do you have over at St. Pete's that you've encountered?
Yeah, do I look like a salad only guy?
You look like a producer, dude. You look like a producer.
I do have an IMDb now, so that is pretty cool. No, I think for us, it's more, I would like to talk more about the kind of the mental aspect and the ability not to get scared about trying something new, and whether that's something more kind of fundamental with what Monty did, in my opinion, pivoting from meetings only and saying, let's try this leisure side and let's do a campaign that we can really measure bookings and things attached to that, or what we did, which was, definitely more difficult to measure from a true booking standpoint, but certainly reach and engagement and views. So I think it's about having that mindset to not just get, at some point, how many, just basic display ads can we buy, right? If you're just doing the same stuff over and over, and again, I get it, that's an important piece of the mix, but I think it's also important, good chance to do something new. You don't always know where that's going to land. And for us, it's been really successful. I didn't touch on the earned media side of this. Obviously, we talked a lot about the digital marketing, but of course, there's a ton of earned media, not just within the industry, but locally and throughout the travel and tourism space. Believe it or not, when you create a TV show about your destination, locals love it, right? It's something that they can get excited about and put forward. And word of mouth is still king, as we know. So it was pretty cool. Actually, a quick story. For those who know the Nextdoor app and website, I'm on there, and you get those random crazy threads. There was one day I saw somebody had posted about the TV show in there, and the amount of conversation from locals being excited about seeing their destination come to life was really cool. Is that our intended audience here? No, we're trying to inspire travel, but the reality is you can use locals and your partners to help get that message out to their audiences and their circles to drive that end goal, which is visitation. So maybe a little meandering here on your question, but take that leap, try something new.
Well, and I think it's really important what you said, about not being afraid to change things. So you have, in seriousness here now, you've talked about doing a second season. You're seriously considering, you've got great metrics behind it. You're highly thoughtful about it. That's a continuation of the program right there. And what I really want to ask, and I want to ask Monty this too, I mean, you've sort of set out, I like Jason's 10% rule, 10% as an incubator. Are you going to maintain or formalize that either in St. Pete's or in Irving? Because I'm clearly, we're all digging the work you're doing with your innovation. Is there a way to make that part of the culture of the destination organization?
No doubt. I mean, I will say, I don't have a formal 70-20-10, and perhaps we should kind of, memorialize that. But every 6 months when we get together and really talk about what that next 6 months looks like, I always implore, bring me stuff I don't know about, bring me stuff we haven't talked about or we don't know, because you never know where that next idea is going to come from. And you have to allow space for it to breathe and to grow. And so perhaps I'll put a little bit more structure behind it, because I love the thought.
I love the thought too. Monty, over to you. You know that you've both always been innovators, and I certainly want to underline that. But the idea that you've done something here that's revealed itself is, first of all, is Leisure is crushing it. We've talked about it, but I haven't asked the question directly. It is continuing on a go forward basis, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It would be foolish not to. It will naturally continue to evolve. But yeah, we are definitely going to continue pursuing this new market. In fact, next year, Aaron has we've already planned out several new campaigns, a series of new campaigns, and so we'll just approach it a little bit differently. But yes, we'll absolutely.
Can you feel a shift in the zeitgeist over there in terms of, you sounded excited when you talked about all of the team making sort of real-time decisions, and how it sounds like the team's bought into that in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we have the data to back it up. We know this is working. We can report on it. We can clearly see it. And it's been a lot of fun working with Aaron's team. It's been very seamless. Our team communicates with his team frequently. And so there's a lot of energy that comes out of that. And it's just been a really good experience. Of course, one thing I would say, just to kind of build on what Leroy and Jason mentioned about moonshots and trying new things, not everything is going to be a home run. But as long as you've done your due diligence, you are strategic about your approach, and the data supports it, I think you should absolutely be confident about experimenting and testing it out. That's definitely an important thing to always do.
Jason, over to you. We've all become more digitally savvy in the last year, and that's a great thing. The cohort of Gen Zers coming into the workforce now are more digitally savvy than ever. What would your observations be on encouraging this kind of development, not just at the entry level, but at the C-suite level? What do we need to do more of?
Yeah, well, I think these guys said it best, right? In a nutshell, just failing intelligently. I think oftentimes you learn as much, if not more, from failing than you do from your wins, right? But you have to have systems in place, I think, and start to build trust to be able to do that. And so I think, as we look forward, being more, we've said, and Dave, we talked about this lots of times with agile marketing and trying to take that approach. And we are moving towards that internally well to help evolve towards this, because of the fact that, instead of placing everything we've got on one big bet campaign or two big campaigns through the year, which we're all always going to tout did well because we have so much invested in it, right? I think what we're trying to do is trying to be more agile, and the pandemic has certainly taught us that we need to be that, to try to, take more rapid iterations over these big bets, right? And I think we're starting to see a shift in those type of things, and a bigger move to digital. Digital allows us, to be able to pivot and move very quickly. When we do it more with traditional marketing, still serves a purpose, but it's very hard to pivot and move because things take months and months and months to get into place to work effectively, right? So I think that's one thing. I think from a data-driven approach, I think being able to connect the dots from our marketing activities through is something that we need to evolve to. And then lastly, something that Aaron and Monty both touched on was this collaboration piece, right? Our CEO, Ryan, refers to this as a bicycle built for three, right? And I think it's important to mention here because historically, I've been in this industry now for about 11 years. Prior to the role that I'm in now, I served as the Vice President of Digital Marketing at SimpleView, and we worked with hundreds of clients. And very rarely, though, did we have conversations with agencies and other agencies when we're meeting with clients. It was very siloed and there was a hierarchy. I think one thing that we also need to evolve towards, and what we're starting to see more of, is being much more collaborative. Everybody being more comfortable in their skin and understanding that we're focused on this goal and how do we all work together to accomplish that goal, whether we're on the front steering that direction as the agency or lead agency on it, or whether we're on the back like SimpleView is oftentimes with technology empowering that. It doesn't matter. We just all need to be on the same bike.
Well, I totally appreciate that, Jason. We're going to do a quick lightning round as we reach the end here. Excellent job today of talking about how destination organizations have shifted to really focus on the idea of meeting the consumer where and how they shop. But at the core of each of your ideas is this idea of meeting the consumer where and how they shop, not on the channels we want, not on the channels that we have easy access to or can buy, but how do they consume? And it was David Ogilvy who said it best. The consumer is not an idiot. The consumer is your partner, your friend, your wife. We all consume tourism well, and I got to applaud all four guests today for really at the core of it, in my opinion, championing meeting the consumer where and how they shop. Final words. I'm going to go to you first, Aaron Nissen. You've got 30 seconds.
Well, I think my final recommendation would just be, use data, make smart decisions, and hone in on the markets that matter. I think with Irving, we realized they're not going to be a leisure destination for everybody. There's a small niche group, and that niche is strong enough to sustain, some of the occupancy through, the years, especially during the pandemic. I don't see Irving going national with their campaigns for leisure. So there's a sweet spot that is very cost effective. And I think other destinations, that's something to consider, rather the one size fits all campaigns, hyper targeted niche campaigns, hitting the right people with the right message for the right purpose, proves to be better results, takes more time, but DMOs are going to need to be more accountable with their funds going forward and show how every dollar is actually helping the economy. And I think that's where big campaigns may not be quite as effective. And the niche campaigns, I think, really work for many destinations.
Wise words, Aaron. Always a pleasure to talk to you and get inside your head. Thank you for that. Leroy, over to you. What do you want to share, please?
Yeah, I would say take the leap. Don't be scared to take the leap. And then when you do, don't forget that you need to find other ways to extend the product. So think about, the engagement, the sweepstakes, and get that first party data. Jason mentioned privacy and the data privacy push. Owning as much data as we can as a DMO, considering we're not part of the transaction, has always been a challenge and will continue to be a challenge. Get that consumer data if you can. Email acquisition, start there, and then resell and remarket. So take the leap, but don't just stop there. Find ways to get that data.
Well, and Leroy, I really appreciate the balance between using data to drive a project that in itself is extremely innovative and loose focus. So both sides of that necessary to make it a success. I do want to come back to you and include you in a discussion in a few weeks on the destination as content. We're having a big discussion at a global level about competing with all the other media out there. And I love your example. So thanks for being here. Really enjoyed that. Thank you. I'm going to throw it over to you, Jason. Parting words, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Yeah, I think it's the same things Leroy said, right? Look for those ways, Walt Disney said to +1 something, right? I think that's what Leroy's done here. He's looking for other ways to be able to amplify and take it one step further. And that requires embracing change, right? Change is scary, right? This last year was scary for a lot of us, but out of disruption comes opportunity. And those who take the first steps to be able to do that, get that first mover advantage, and are able to yield the rewards of being, or rather embracing that change. So that would be what I would say if I'm looking for a quick tidbit to leave with you with.
Always good to talk to you, Jason. Thanks for your insight. Thanks for being here. Final words to you, Monty. It has been a pleasure to watch the Irving program roll out. I'm excited by I'm going to use the word again, the sheer agility that both teams demonstrated. Final words to you.
I think it's important to say, Leroy and our team, we stumbled into some outside money that wasn't part of our typical operating budget. And so we had the benefit of that. But in reality, campaigns, they don't have to be expensive to be effective. This kind, a data-driven approach allows you to scale it in any direction. So the things that we're doing can be modified. And of course, we would never do something that Vegas might be doing. And so I think some folks might be viewing this in the same way. And just keep in mind, you don't need to have $100,000 to do an effective campaign. You can do it at a much smaller scale and be every bit as effective with those great conversion rates. And so, yeah.
So thanks for that. And that's a really important point to make. It does make it accessible. I appreciate the work all of you have put in to moving us forward. This has been a great opportunity. I want to thank the eTourism Summit for its great work and the See Tomorrow series. And I'm going to turn it back over to Will Seacom. Just let me say to all of you again, thanks so much for taking the time to be here and sharing your stories. I think it's a really important thing that we do in this industry.
David, thank you so much. You, Jason, Aaron, and the entire team back at SimpleView for all of your support, for leading this amazing conversation. This was, I think, an all-time record. We have a guest today from Uzbekistan. So we're taking eTourism Summit Global, and I think Leroy and Monty, that was a big tribute to you guys taking the time to be part of eTourism Summit. So thank you all so much. Look forward to seeing you all in Las Vegas in September. Looking forward to a great week, and have a great day. Thank you all so much for your insight, ideas, and inspiration. It was a fantastic day.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.